Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mindful Play Summit. Today, we have the opportunity to speak with Rusty Keeler. He's a natural playscape designer and author for 30 years who has traveled the world designing outdoor play environments and speaking about the benefits and beauty of saying yes to children's play. Described as a cross between Mr. Rogers and Jerry Garcia, Rusty is the author of multiple books on play and playscapes, including his new book, Adventures in Risky Play. What is your yes? Thanks so much for watching. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm super excited to introduce you to Rusty Keeler. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about risky play and tapping into that inner guidance. So welcome, Rusty. I am super excited that you're back again to speak with us. The last time we chatted was about 6 months ago, and I took so much away from our conversation, and I just love seeing all the expansion and growth that's happening within your business. And I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit more about that risky play. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to be here, Crystal.
I love your energy. And today when we talk a little bit about risky play, I'm just curious to know from your lens, why is this so important for children?
Yes, good question. In some ways, risky play, I think of risky play as just play.
Yes.
It is just play. And we know the benefits of play. That is how children grow and develop and learn and become, who they're going to be in life. And risky play is in some ways, it's the play that just makes adults nervous. I think of it that way. It's kind of play that makes adults nervous because it's natural play often for children because they are just growing and taking things to the next level, the next level, the next level. And it's important to be able to support that. And we as, educators and, people that support play and believe in play, we want to do that. That's why we're in it. That's why we're in the business. And that's what we love to see. But we often find ourselves saying no to things because it
Yeah.
makes us scared, makes us nervous, right?
Yeah, there's that piece like, okay, if I say yes and they hurt themselves, that's my responsibility. Or, I just saw your interview with licensing. It's like,
Hmm.
wow, that was so inspiring when, we think that we're doing something we might get in trouble or we're doing something and it's that self judgment piece. So kind of rolls into the next question, like, what can we do as adults to support in that risky play and kind of remove those no's from ourselves in a safe way?
Yeah. One thing to do, maybe just to kind of start with, is kind of get centered in ourselves and think about what are our core values for play.
Love that.
What are our core values? What do we really believe in? And if we're in this business and we love children and we love child development and play and supporting that deep down, we're a rock with that, right? Those are our beliefs. Our core beliefs are like, we want to support play. We believe it's important for children. We honor childhood. And so when we can get centered in that, then everything can kind of spring from that. Fears come and go. I think when we're talking about risky play, we are talking about seeing a child do something. It makes us nervous because it's built in. We see the worst thing that could happen. We imagine a terrible thing happening, a child bouncing on a log, and that's kind of our brain kicks in. It's kind of evolution has kind of uh, led us to survive because we can imagine the worst things happening, so we avoid them. But that often makes us as adults who work with children stop the play that ultimately we know in our core is good for children, is important for
Absolutely.
children.
Well, and that risk taking, right? Understanding what's right and what's wrong. And from what I'm understanding is if we keep stopping that, if we keep interrupting that play, that risky play, whatever we want to call it, that also hinders the development of that child to therefore then not be able to make decisions at a later age in their life that would support in that decision making what's safe, what's not safe.
Yeah, this is the time for children to tap their own inner guidance and learn to listen, learn to hear, learn to know that they have an inner guidance with them that will help them decide if they want to do something risky or not do something risky.
I love
Balance
that.
on that log or not balance on that log.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when children can tap that, when they know that's they're gonna have that relationship with that voice their whole life. But if we're jumping in and saying, "Don't do that, don't do that," you could poke your eye out. We're kind of, we're racing them and beating them to the punch. We're beating them to the opportunity for them to decide for themselves, to tap that inner guidance. And so that's kind of one of the ideas of like risky play is good because we want kids to develop that. But it's hard for us because it means we need to, at least initially, be quiet, shut our mouths, observe, give it a few seconds, 1,000, 2,000, and watch what children are doing. Because more often than not, children have a plan. They are tapping it themselves. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Now, crazy things happen. Toddlers, you got to watch them because they'll try anything, and accidents happen too. And so it's okay to jump in and say no. But I think what we want to do when we really want to support play, all kinds of play, is that we want to learn as an adult to have a new knee jerk reaction and step back and watch and see what happens.
I love that. I'll never
Yeah.
forget watching one of your YouTubes where I think it was your son on your tire swing. And he's just
Yeah.
whipping around and just slightly almost hit the fence. And there I am in my seat, and you're just calm as a cucumber. You're just like, yeah, this is how it goes, right? And learns when to stop, when to ride. And it's inspiring because you're right, as educators or as parents, a lot of the times we don't want to see it happen, or we think about, that negative, like what we don't want to happen versus thinking about the positive. And I really like how you said, pause for a moment, right? 3-second pause. And, after our last chat in September, I was like, it's getting risky, and I said, okay, children, we want to go down the slide. And I set some parameters. They really wanted to go down face first. I'm like, hey, that's totally fine. Cause everyone's like feet first down the slide. So
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, so how can we make this safe? And they created a little bit of like play boundaries with me. So they said, well,
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should make sure we have our hands out. Well, why do we want to put our hands out? Well, and because it was interesting because we're going from changing the rules of now, okay, every teacher says feet first, but now we're going to change the rules. So I
Mm-hmm.
included them in on it, and they're
Great.
like, oh, awesome. So if I'm going to go down the slide with no hands out, and one of them tried, and they're like, whoa, instantly they wanted to put their hands out. So they encouraged each other to create safety, thinking about problem solving instead of just, and there's other ways to do it, is just letting them do it. But here I'm reshaping our play. And it was very beautiful because then they could acknowledge, okay, you know what? I want to go down on my back with no hands. So they would say, teacher, like spotter, right? And they knew that if not, then their head would hit the ground. So they created their own parameters around it, and it was so beautiful to see. And my other educator came, she's like, oh, we're now going head first down the slope. I said, yeah, let's just watch. And she was just amazed because they had come up with this beautiful way of doing it in a safe manner, that they knew if they were going to go down without their hands, that they were going to get wood chips in their face. But it was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful because it supported me in the process of letting go, because ultimately that safety mechanism wasn't for them, it was for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognized that. But as I was taking little bits of our conversation and integrating some more, the beautiful things were coming out, where children were now hiding in tires, and we were stacking tires on top. And even though I wasn't there, and they had this beautiful experience. Whereas some of that stuff I might not have integrated because I was afraid of licensing, or I was afraid of certain things of my own letdown of my own belief system, so to speak. So I wanted to share that experience because it definitely made a difference in my each and every day. And now they're problem solving even better. And I'm taking that step back, but I still find it's like this old voice in the head saying, and I have to just remind myself, right, to just pause for a moment. So, what are some things that educators, parents can do to support in that pause, or to just kind of calm ourselves down, and allow children's play to be more natural?
Yeah. Great story. I love the idea of weaving kids into it. I think that's so important. So yeah, I think the deep breath, you're all about taking deep breaths and stuff. So in some ways, all this is like uh, it's like a yoga practice, really. It's like, because you're suddenly being aware, say, of that voice, that you'll poke your eye out voice. You'll na 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 na, and that's important. Like that's safe. That keeps our young ones safe, right? Keeps them alive. uh but and that used to be the only voice we heard, I would say in the past. when we're working with children, we can see something that looks a little dangerous. We think of the worst thing that could happen. You'll poke your eye out, you'll break your arm, you'll knock your tooth out, whatever. And then we say, no, don't do it, right? Because then once they don't do that, whatever that activity is, then we can feel like, oh, good, I prevented all that bad things. Those bad things were happening. We don't want that to happen to kids. I saw what could happen and I said no. But we want to give that kind of important play a fighting chance. We want to give children more freedom for self-directed play, play that they can manage, that they can manage the rules themselves. So that voice will be there. I think we're not. I don't think we'll ever eliminate that voice, and maybe we shouldn't limit that voice. But what we're doing, we're adding another voice. And this is the voice of the benefits, of the positives that could happen. So, okay, you could poke your eye out, balancing on that log, you could fall off that log, but you do something that people call a risk benefit analysis. And this could be something that you do on paper with your staff. It could be something you do with your children. You could do it formally. You could do it in the moment as you're watching the kids on the slide. And so it's looking at those risks, but also looking at the benefits. And so you think, oh, there's balancing going on, there's problem solving, them going down the slide, that's creativity. It's also maybe a thrill of they're learning about themselves and their body in a different way. They're seeing the world from a different perspective. So you list those things out. And that might be going on in our brains in split second moments. But you can also, if you do it on paper or whatever, it's so you look at those risks, you look at those benefits, then you talk about the management. You think, how am I going to manage this situation? And so part of your management with the slide was, I'm going to talk to the children about it. And maybe I'll still have some limits myself, what I feel comfortable with, but talking about the children about it. And then maybe I'm going to check at the bottom of that slide. I'm going to remove hazards. That's our job, to remove the hazards so kids can take risks, so they can choose to take risks. So I want to make sure at the bottom of that slide, there's no real head bonkers. There's no toy that's wedged in somewhere that kids can't see. And then you can make your choice. And so then we're not making the choice just on the risk, just on the danger, just on the bad things. We're also weighing in the good things. And then you can say, okay, there's risks, but there's benefits, and then make your choice. And then we know in the moment it's somewhere in between, because things could go either way. But at least when you're making that initial decision to have tires and boards in your yard, or go down the slide in a different way, or go up a slide, let children go up a slide. You're thinking all this through, right? Right. I always tell people
Totally.
that's the most controversial thing of
Right.
all. But what's also good about these risk benefit analysis. So if you formally do some of this stuff, say you're going to have a boulder on your playground, where in the old days, the old way of thinking was, oh, you could conk your head, you get those things out of here, or roots on the playground, or a fallen log, or all that stuff. It used to be looked at as just at risk, get rid of it. But now we're saying there's benefits to it, and then we're doing things about it to mindfully put it there. But when it comes to licensing and talking to parents, those risk benefit analysis come in handy,
Beautiful.
because you can say, hey, it's not haphazard that we have that boulder there. It's not by accident that I'm letting the children just do that kind of stuff. I'm doing it mindfully. I'm doing it thoughtfully. And here's how we thought it through. And that's good for staff to see. New staff comes in and says, oh, you do this here. And you're like, yeah, actually, well, teachers and I got together and we talked about, why we have chickens or light fires, or any of that stuff. And then for licensors to realize that you know what you're doing, that you're doing it on purpose.
I love that.
Because as I'm talking to licensors, I find out that's really, now that there's more risky play, that now that there's more natural playgrounds, now that there's more loose parts, in some ways, you don't know if, at first glance, is this best practice, or is this what I used to think of as the worst environment? Like, and so, like, it's our job as adults, and the jobs as caregivers and providers and educators to prove that this is best practice. This is best
Yeah,
practice. Yeah. And we believe in this, and we've thought it through, and hear the stories and the benefits that you see every day with children. So that then those licensors can be like, okay, all right, they know what they're doing.
absolutely. When I think, you nailed it on the head, where they just want to know that you've thought things through, right? And what's interesting is, so for us in Canada, we have licensing officers, but they're all different. So it really depends who you get. But the common theme that I'm understanding, and even watching your interview, is that they just want to know that you've done this analysis, that you have a plan in place, and that everybody's on board with it. And at the end of the day, if they're looking at a structure and they're able to see the benefits and understand the benefits, this is how we can really create the new foundation for learning, and really start to incorporate these beautiful risky play practices and these play practices. And it starts and ends with us as the parent and educator and facilitator, because kids are just like, woo, they're just going to,
Yeah.
go with whatever feels
Yeah.
good. If it's
Yeah.
balancing, if it's jumping, and a lot of the times we bring in a lot of nature. So you have a wide range of, a 3-year-old with a stick versus a 5-year-old with a stick. It's quite different, right? So for myself, I've been really focusing on a redirection. So if all of a sudden it's sword fighting, and you've got like these little ones of sword fighting, it's like, okay, so let's talk about, because they get really excited. So sometimes I do have to remove said object for different age groups, but instead we just use our imagination, and we're bringing out, next thing you know, if it's not this sword, it's maybe this is a magic one, and we shapeshift and it's not as aggressive. But if they want to have a sword fight, we bust out our imaginary swords, and I'm still allowing them, but I have to tweak it a little bit, just based on some things, just it's just not an option, right? But not saying no to it. It's just tweaking it in a way that is okay for that age group. Now, the 5-year-olds, they want to have a sword fight. It's a totally different story, because they're able to recognize different things. So, I still have a lot of learning to do as well. It's like, how do I incorporate that? So then it's like, hey, well, instead of a pokey stick, now we got pool noodles,
That's it. That's
right?
it. Yeah,
So it's like, okay,
absolutely.
awesome. Let's
Yeah.
do the sword fight. Now,
Yeah.
teacher, I'm just going to trade you with this. And then they were able to really enjoy the noodle fight. But
Yeah.
it took me a moment to kind of go, okay. And, having these conversations and expanding my awareness to say, okay, that 1%, how can I make this that 1% better? So I'm not stopping it, but I'm facilitating it in a way to say, hey, I see what you want to do. Let's build on that, and kind of shape shift with them. But I wouldn't have had that awareness, because you're trained in a certain way, or your upbringing, your beliefs. And, we talk about the chatter, but I just love having that new, I got my Rusty over here, right? It's like, okay, I can do this. But it's, having these conversations and sharing that experience, I really appreciate, because it's allowed me to step up to that 1% better as myself, to remove my own beliefs and fears, and to allow these children to fully explore in a whole new way. Whereas maybe it just would have been shut down. I think I told you the story about my children climbing the tree, and the neighbor's child, fell out of the tree and broke the femur. And I was like, no more tree. It was just
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
reaction. I was like,
Yeah.
Mama Bear,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yep.
And like, well, wait a second. Let's talk about the tree. And it has so many benefits, and how the tree supports us, and where are you climbing? So I went out, and I talked to them about it. I said, show me where you're climbing. Do we climb all the way to the top? No. Why don't you climb to the top? Well, the branches, and they're telling me, they're educating me. Mom, the branches are thinner. Why would I climb up to that branch when it's, and I could see them problem solving to educate me as well. And what's really cool is, a lot of the time our children are our own teachers, right? It's like, Mom,
Yeah.
we're okay. We're going to stick
Mhm.
close to the trunk. We're going to go on the fat ones, and
Uh-huh.
we're good.
Hello.
I'm like, okay. So I just have to like take that deep breath,
Yeah.
pause for a moment, and be that observer, and learn from them, and reflect on my own childhood. It's like, okay, man, I could have really taught my parents a few things too about climbing trees, right?
Yeah, I remember, I was lucky enough to I was in Europe, lived in Europe for a year, and I was lucky enough for my parents to be over there on a vacation, and we did a little driving tour around. And we hiked in Switzerland and mountains and stuff. And I remember being at a campground, watching like a Swiss family, a real rugged outdoorsy Swiss family, and the kids were jumping in puddles, and I'm Mr. Outdoorsy, and uh for play and stuff. And I asked my mom, like, did you let me do that? And she was just like, no. And I remember just, I felt like, I felt pretty adventurous as a kid. And of course, when my mom's not around, I jumped in plenty of puddles or, got into all sorts of things kids get into when their parents aren't around. Um, but it was just an interesting reflection to think about. Yeah, we're all comfortable with different things as educators, as parents, and we all have different pressures as adults. And it's not all saying yes, yes, yes. I still love my mom. I understand that, there's times when kids it's okay to get muddy, and then there's times when it's a pain in the butt to get muddy. And, I have that as a parent myself of like when my kids get when I'm like, go for it, it's totally fine. Or when it's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? The car, how are we gonna, get you back in the car or whatever,
Where's the hose, right? Just spray
yeah,
them
just
down.
hose them all. I mean, this is they say kids are like 100% washable.
Yes.
So eventually, at least 95% washable. Maybe there's some stuff that they
I
can't.
love that.
But it's okay to say no. We still want that, the mama bear thing to kick in because we want to still protect our kids. And some people say like, well, I do different things with my own children. I'd let them do more than I would with the children that I'm working with at school, which is understandable. Other people's children, you want to make sure they go home with all the same number of fingers and toes and that they came in with and all that jazz. And you don't want anything really bad to happen to them. Um, but it's also, I think, the job of educators to support play and support, child play based learning and exploring. And maybe at your center, at your school, in your own backyard, that child may have more opportunities to grow and explore and get messy and do things that they might not do at home. and
Absolutely.
and the parents, may not have not enough time to do that kind of outdoor play. They might be more nervous too. They might not have the education that you have as an educator to, the beauty and benefits of this kind of stuff. So it's really the job of educators and people that work with children to create these opportunities for this kind of play. And I've heard
Absolutely.
I've heard many, many, many times when they do that, parents see that happening once they kind of understand it, and then that helps them at home say, "Oh, I can feel better letting my kids climb a tree. I'm letting them get in their boots in the puddle like the Swiss Family, Swiss Family Robinson." Yeah, so the parents then have an opportunity to learn and grow, and then the life at home changes too. So
Absolutely.
so that you're also an educator with the parents.
I love that. When you're talking, it just reminds me the children like to hang off this branch, and I purposely haven't cut it. It's like comes out and whips around, and they all know whoever's on that, everybody else got to stand back, right? And I remember seeing parents coming, "Oh, you're letting them hang off of that?" I said, "Yeah. What are your concerns?" And they're like, they just it was just like an innate like, oh. But when I wanted to express that and like let's have a conversation, they really couldn't come up with any concerns because there's soft sand under it. It's not like they're going to bump on anything. But it was interesting because it's just that reaction of ooh. But then when you actually try to find out like what's the worst case scenario, what are your concerns, let's talk about this, nothing was able to come up. So I like how you say it's that there's this inner belief or that how we were up, our own environment, our own upbringing. But learning to tap into that inner guidance as an educator or as a parent to say, wait a second, let's talk about all the positive things and switching that thought pattern, right? Starts with our thoughts. We could focus on all the negative things, or we can do that analysis and think of all the positive things. And I bet you there's way more positives on that scale than there is negatives. And if there are a lot of negatives, then how can we remove some of those, but still allow it to happen? Like the stick in the pool noodle, example where I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
teacher win, woohoo. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then every day it's like they want to do it because that's that they also get to learn with each other. And when they say rough and tumble play, or children with their adults, and having that, it's like bear cubs, it's like that connection piece. It's
Mhm.
something that's maybe like you say not not able to happen at home, but it could happen here in a safe environment. So my wheels are turning now. It's like, okay, each time that, something's going on, like I say, I've got you right here. So thank you for, thanks for
Mhm.
just being that extra voice for me. Yeah. But that awareness piece that I didn't have before, and even looking at the last 6 months of what shifted and changed, I have to give, some gratitude to you. And I still
That's
follow.
nice.
I'm like
Thanks. Thanks.
following along, and I'm a big Rusty fan. So I hope our listeners
Thanks.
are enjoying the conversation. And you've put together a resource for our listeners, which we'll post the link on your page here. But do you want to just talk a little bit about the 10 ways to support risky play, is what you've called it?
Yeah, yeah. So I just have a nice little resource put together to help people kind of think through these ideas and think about, okay, the benefits of risky play and why it's tough to support risky play, but why we really need to for the benefits of children and child development, and kind of walking people through the process of looking within, taking those deep breaths, doing risk benefit analysis, and self reflection about our feelings about risk and about play, both with children
Beautiful.
and in our own lives too.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
awesome, Rusty.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are looking to see more of Rusty, we've got links below, and we've also got a link to one of his YouTube videos that you can also watch and subscribe and follow. They are super fun to explore. So thank you so much, Rusty. If there's one
Thank you,
thing that you
Crystal.
could leave our listeners with today, what would that be?
Yeah, with any of this stuff, starting small is okay. You don't have to feel like you're gonna jump in and just have kids do all sorts of crazy stuff. It's because it's about you taking the baby steps, you feeling more comfortable. And maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, people will feel comfortable trying wilder things, but just start we're just trying to move the needle a little bit, a little bit. So what's like the first thing that you might be able to say yes to? And then see what that feels like. Feel it out and watch what happens. And then maybe you can do a little more, a little more, a little more. But dream big, start small, and never stop.
Yay. Thank you so much, Rusty. And
Thank
thank
you,
you so much for
Crystal.
our listeners for tuning in. Bye.